The silver starship hovered silently above Earth, hidden by technology far beyond human understanding. Vex stood at the main viewing portal, her tall, slender form motionless as she studied the blue planet below. Her skin had a slight purple tinge that seemed to shimmer under the ship's lights, while her large almond-shaped eyes were completely black with no visible pupils. Her people, the Xerians, were known throughout their section of the galaxy as beings of pure logic and scientific pursuits. Chief xenobiologist of the research vessel, the explorer Vex, had spent 20 Earth years studying humans from orbit. Their species fascinated the Xerian Science Council. These creatures were so driven by their emotions, so unpredictable, yet they had managed to build a civilization and were on the verge of significant technological advancement. The Council wanted to understand how such an illogical species could progress. Vex had never felt curiosity, excitement, or anticipation. Such emotions had been bred out of Xerians 10 generations ago. They followed fact and function only, yet the Council had decided that to truly understand humans, they needed closer observation. The explorer would send a small team to Earth disguised as diplomatic, envoys their mission to learn how emotions influenced human development, and whether they truly provided any evolutionary advantage. Commander Trell approached Vex, her movements precise and economical. "The Council has approved your landing party proposal. We descend tomorrow." Vex acknowledged with a slight nod. "The human settlement you selected appears ideal for our purposes. Small enough to limit variables, large enough to provide adequate data. They were to make contact with a research facility in what humans called Montana, a scientific outpost where human researchers studied their own planet's ecology. Their cover story would be a cultural exchange, but every member of the landing party had specific research objectives. Vex would study human social behaviors, how emotions influence their decisions, their inefficient but intriguing mating rituals. The landing module touched down in a clearing 2 miles from the human facility as planned. Vex led her team of 5 researchers, each altered to appear more human-like, though still distinctly alien. Their skin tones adjusted to less vibrant shades, their height reduced slightly. Communication implants had been programmed with all known human languages. They wore simple garments designed to approximate human clothing while accommodating their different physiology. A group of humans approached in vehicles that bounced over the uneven ground. Vex observed them through the view screen, noting their excited expressions, their hurried movements, so different from Xerian efficiency. They exited their vehicles and approached cautiously. A female stepped forward from the group. Vex recognized her from surveillance footage, Lisa Walsh, facility director. Her records indicated she was 34, Earth years old, specialized in environmental science, and had volunteered to lead the welcome committee. She had hair the color of the auburn leaves that fell from trees in the human autumn season, and eyes that reminded Vex of the oceans that covered much of this planet. The airlock opened and Vex stepped out, breathing Earth air for the first time. It contained more nitrogen than Xeria, but was compatible with their biology. The sunlight felt different on her skin, warmer somehow. "I am Vex, lead researcher of the Xerian delegation. We come in peace to learn and share knowledge." Lisa Walsh stepped forward with what humans called a smile, a facial expression. Vex had studied extensively, but never witnessed in person. "Welcome to Earth. We are honored to be the first official contact between our worlds." The human extended her hand, and Vex remembered the briefing on human greeting customs. She reached out and took Lisa's hand. The moment their skin touched, Vex felt something strange, a tingling sensation that traveled up her arm. Her scientific mind immediately began analyzing this unexpected physical reaction. The humans led them to their facility, a collection of buildings surrounded by forests and mountains. The structures were primitive, by Xerian standards, but Vex noted the care in their design, how they blended with the natural environment rather than dominating it, an approach Xerians would consider inefficient. Lisa showed them to their quarters. "You must be tired after your journey, though I have no idea how space travel affects your species. We do not experience fatigue as humans do," Vex replied. "We require rest periods, but at different intervals." Lisa's expression changed in a way Vex could not interpret. Well, then would you like a tour of our facility? Vex spent the remainder of the day with Lisa, observing how the human interacted with her environment. The way she spoke with her hands, moved with unnecessary energy, and frequently made sounds. Vex identified as laughter. Everything about her seemed excessive yet somehow harmonious. She introduced the Xerians to her research team, explaining each person's area of expertise. While the other members of Vex's team dispersed to begin their assigned research, Vex remained with Lisa. Our primary interest is understanding how emotions influence your scientific process, Vex explained. Lisa looked at her with an expression the Xerian identified as surprise. You don't have emotions on your world? We evolved beyond them. Vex stated our ancestors determined emotions were inefficient, a biological function that once served survival purposes but became obsolete as our civilization advanced. We now reproduce through controlled genetic processes. We make decisions based solely on logic. In fact, Lisa was quiet for a moment. This is fascinating to me. I can't imagine science without passion, without the excitement of discovery. Vex recorded this statement in her mental database. Another example of humans attributing emotional qualities to objective processes. Over the next several days, Vex followed Lisa learning about earth science and culture. She observed the human working with her team, noting how they interacted, the social bonds that seemed to influence their research. The inefficiency was obvious. Teams would pause work to engage in conversation unrelated to their tasks. They prepared and consumed food together when individual nutrition would have been more time efficient. They engaged in activities they called jokes and celebrations. Vex recorded everything but found certain patterns difficult to categorize. Lisa, in particular, defied easy analysis. The human seemed to take special interest in Vex, asking questions about Xerian culture, offering to show her Earth customs. One evening, Lisa invited Vex to what she called dinner at her private quarters. You spend so much time observing us, Lisa said. I thought you might enjoy a more personal conversation. Enjoy was not a concept Vex understood, but she recognized the research value. I would find that informative. Lisa's living space was small, but filled with objects that seemed to serve no functional purpose. Colored fabrics hung on walls. Images of landscapes and other humans were displayed on surfaces. Plants grew in containers. Why do you allocate space to non-functional items? Vex asked. Lisa looked around her room. These things make me happy. They remind me of people and places I love. They make this space feel like home. Home on Xeria was merely a sleeping and hygiene station. Vex had never considered that humans would attach emotional significance to dwelling places. She made detailed mental notes. Lisa prepared food, using what she called cooking, a process of applying heat and combining ingredients in ways that seemed unnecessarily complex. Vex had been provided with nutrition supplements designed for her biology, but Lisa insisted she try a small portion of the human food. This dish reminds me of my childhood, Lisa explained. My grandmother made it every spring when the first vegetables came from her garden. Vex noted another example of humans connecting food with memory and emotion. She cautiously tasted the offering. Her sensory receptors registered unfamiliar flavors and textures. The experience was unlike anything in her previous research. This contains compounds not present in our supplements, Vex observed. Lisa laughed. That is such a scientific way of saying you like it. Like was irrelevant, but Vex noted that the food did create unusual sensations. As they continued their meal, Lisa asked more personal questions about Xerian life, how they learned, what their homes were like, whether they had families. Vex explained the communal raising of offspring, the educational programming, the efficient organization of Xerian society. It sounds so different from our messy, complicated lives, Lisa said. But don't you ever feel lonely? Lonely is a human concept, Vex replied. It implies an emotional need for companionship. Xerians function as independent units that coordinate for efficiency. We do not experience such needs. Lisa looked at her with an expression Vex had not categorized before. I can't imagine living without connection, without love. Love. Vex had studied this concept extensively in human literature, art, and scientific papers. It appeared to be central to human experience, yet remained the most difficult emotional state for Xerians to quantify. I have observed that humans attribute great significance to this concept yet struggle to define it precisely. Lisa smiled. That is exactly what makes it special. It defies scientific explanation, but it's the most powerful force in human life. As Vex left Lisa's quarters that night, she found her mind continuing to process their conversation. Such extended analysis was unusual. Her thoughts should have been organized, cataloged, and filed for her report. Yet they continued to surface unbidden. Something about Lisa Walsh and her explanations of human emotion created unexpected processing patterns in Vex's mind. She would need to run a diagnostic scan before her rest cycle. The following morning, Vex performed a routine systems check, but found no anomalies to explain her extended thought patterns about Lisa Walsh. She attributed the processing irregularity to the new environment and continued with her research schedule. Each member of her team had been assigned specific areas of human behavior to study Vex, focused on social bonding and communication. Lisa appeared at Vex quarters early. I thought you might like to join me today. We're taking samples from the lake ecosystem. It's one of my favorite research activities. The Xerian considered the invitation. The lake ecosystem was not part of her assigned research parameters, but direct observation of humans engaged in scientific work would provide valuable data. I will accompany you. They walked through the facility grounds toward a large vehicle Lisa called a research truck. Several other humans were loading equipment. Vex noted how they called greetings to each other, made jokes, engaged in what appeared to be completely unnecessary conversation, yet somehow coordinated their actions efficiently. The drive to the lake took 30 minutes. During this time, Lisa explained the research they would conduct. They were monitoring changes in the lake's chemical composition, tracking populations of microscopic organisms, and testing for environmental contaminants. Vex listened carefully, but found herself distracted by the way sunlight filtered through the trees, creating patterns on Lisa's face. The lake stretched before them, surrounded by tall green trees and rocky shores. Teams of researchers spread out around the water edge, setting up equipment. Vex followed Lisa to a small boat. Have you ever been on water before? Lisa asked as they climbed in. Xeria has oceans, but they are not used for recreation, Vex replied. We extract resources remotely. Lisa started the boat's engine. Then this will be a new experience for you, she said with that facial expression humans called a smile. The small vessel moved across, the water surface creating waves behind it. Vex watched the shore recede as they headed toward the center of the lake. The sensation of floating on liquid was unfamiliar. The boat rocked slightly with each movement, and Vex had to adjust her balance here. Lisa cut the engine and the boat drifted to a stop. We take samples from different depths to track changes throughout the water column. She began preparing equipment, explaining each step as she worked. This device measures temperature, oxygen content, and acidity at various depths. This one collects water samples for later analysis. Vex observed carefully, noting the precision with which Lisa handled her instruments, despite the unstable platform of the floating boat. When Lisa offered her the opportunity to collect samples, Vex agreed. This direct experience would provide more complete data. She leaned over the side of the boat, following Lisa's instructions on operating the collection device. Look, Lisa's voice drew Vex's attention. Just below the surface, a school of small silver fish moved through the clear water, catching the sunlight as they turned in perfect unison. Vex had studied Earth life forms extensively, but seeing them in their natural environment was different somehow. They are swimming in a synchronized pattern to increase efficiency and safety. Vex noted. Yes, Lisa agreed. But isn't it beautiful? Beautiful. Vex had studied this human concept extensively. Xerians recognized patterns, symmetry, mathematical perfection. But beauty as humans experienced it was considered a subjective emotional response with no scientific validity. Yet watching the fish move through the water, Vex experienced something that defied categorization, something beyond mere observation throughout. The day they collected samples, worked side by side, performed analysis. Vex noticed how Lisa hummed melodies while she worked, how she paused occasionally to watch birds flying overhead or to point out cloud formations. Other researchers joined them, sharing food and beverages during what they called lunch break. Vex observed their interactions, their laughter, their seemingly effortless cooperation. In late afternoon storm clouds gathered over the mountains, Lisa looked up at the darkening sky. We should head back. Weather can change quickly here. They packed their equipment and returned to the boat. As Lisa started the engine, large drops of water began falling from the sky. Rain. Vex had observed this weather phenomenon from orbit but never experienced it directly. The droplets fell on her skin, creating unusual sensations. The boat accelerated across the lake surface, but the rain intensified, coming down in sheets. We're going to get soaked. Lisa called over the sound of water hitting. Water. Her hair was already wet, clinging to her face, yet she was smiling, appearing to find pleasure in this uncomfortable situation. The rain fell harder, reducing visibility. The boat bounced over waves that had not been present earlier. Lisa navigated toward shore with practiced skill. But suddenly the engine made a sputtering sound and stopped. Not now. Lisa tried restarting it several times, but it remained silent. Must be water in the fuel line. She looked at Vex apologetically. We're going to drift for a bit until I can fix this. The boat rocked more violently as wind increased. Vex calculated that without power, they would drift to the opposite shore in approximately 42 minutes. Lightning flashed across the sky, followed by a loud sound thunder. Lisa explained, seeing Vex's attention shift upward. The atmospheric disruption continued, rain soaking them completely. Vex noted unusual sensations on her skin. The rapid temperature changed, the constant impact of water droplets. The experience created data patterns unlike anything in her previous research. As the boat drifted, she watched Lisa attempt to repair the engine. Her movements remained precise despite the unstable conditions, her focus unwavering. She spoke to the engine using words. Vex, identified as encouragement, though speaking to inanimate objects was clearly irrational. After 16 minutes, Lisa looked up triumphantly. Got it. She pulled the starter cord and the engine roared to life. They continued toward the research facility, shoreline now visible through the rain. By the time they reached land, both were completely saturated with water. Other researchers helped secure the boat. Lisa led Vex to a small building near the shore. Let's get dry, she said, opening the door to reveal a simple room with benches and storage containers. She retrieved what she called towels, handing one to Vex. Sorry about the unexpected swimming lesson. Vex observed that despite the obvious physical discomfort the adverse weather had caused, Lisa still displayed signs of positive emotion. She dabbed at her wet skin with the towel, following Lisa's example. Though Xerian biology processed excess moisture differently, Lisa removed her outer garments, hanging them on hooks along the wall. You should take off your wet clothes too. You can wear these until yours dry. She offered Vex spare garments from a storage container. Vex hesitated. Xerians did not share the human concept of modesty, but she recognized this as a social ritual. Lisa turned slightly away, offering privacy as Vex changed into the dry clothing. The fabric felt different against her skin, softer than Xerian materials. Better? Lisa asked, now wearing dry garments herself. Her hair was still damp, falling in loose waves around her face. Vex considered yes. The thermal regulation is improved. Lisa laughed, that musical sound that Vex had cataloged in her research notes. You know, most humans would just say yes, warmer. Now she sat on the bench, patting the space beside her. We can wait here until the rain passes. They sat listening to rain hit the roof. The small room seemed to intensify Lisa's presence. Vex was aware of the humans breathing, the slight movement as she pushed wet hair from her face, the scent of lake water, and something else Vex could not identify. I love days like this, Lisa said softly. Not the equipment failure, obviously, but being out on the lake, seeing everything so alive. The rain connecting everything. Vex processed this statement. Did the unexpected complications not interfere with your research objectives? Lisa turned to look at her. I guess that's the difference between us. I value the experience as much as the data, sometimes more. Her eyes met Vex. Is everything on your world always perfect? Always controlled, or environments are optimized for function? Vex replied, we do not have weather variations inside our habitats. Unexpected events are minimized. Lisa considered this for a moment. But how do you adapt? How do you learn to handle the unexpected if everything is always the same? Vex had not considered this perspective. Xerians valued predictability, stability, consistency. Yet Lisa's question suggested these very qualities might limit certain types of development. The conversation created new pathways of analysis in Vex's mind. The sound of the rain lessened, and Lisa stood looking out a small window. I think we're clear to head back. She gathered their wet clothes and equipment. Vex followed her outside. The air smelled different after the rain, fresher. Somehow the landscape appeared transformed, water droplets clinging to every surface, capturing and reflecting light. As they walked back to the facility, Lisa pointed out how the rain had changed their surroundings. New streams forming as water found paths downhill. Plants appearing more vibrant, colors more intense. Small creatures emerging from hiding places. Vex observed everything with heightened attention. The input was excessive by Xerian standards, yet somehow she processed it all that evening. Vex returned to her quarters to prepare her daily report to the ship. Her communication device activated, creating a secure link to the Explorer commander. Trell appeared on the small screen, her features impassive. Report your findings, Vex. Morning arrived with clear skies. Vex found herself anticipating the day in a manner inconsistent with Xerian thought patterns. She had scheduled observations of the human medical facility, but her processing systems seemed more focused on when she might see Lisa again. This prioritization was illogical yet persistent. Vex met with her research team for their daily coordination meeting. The other Xerians reported their findings in precise, efficient language. No one else mentioned processing, anomalies, or unusual sensations. They functioned as proper Xerians should. Vex maintained her composure, sharing only standard observations. It would not be beneficial to the mission to reveal her developing irregularities. As the meeting concluded, Lisa appeared at the doorway, her presence creating an immediate response in Vex's neural pathways. Good morning, she said to the group. I hope you're finding everything you need for your research. She looked directly at Vex. Some of us are heading to town today. We thought you might like to see more of how humans live outside the research facility. The invitation provided an excellent opportunity to gather data on human social structures. Another member of Vex's team, researcher Nex, volunteered to accompany them. This was logical as Nex's assignment focused on human community organization. Yet Vex felt an unexpected response, a preference to observe alone with Lisa. This preference had no scientific basis, and she immediately suppressed it. We'll participate in this observational opportunity, Vex stated. They traveled in what Lisa called a van with 5 humans, including Lisa and 2 Xerians. The humans engaged in what they termed conversation, discussing topics that appeared random and unconnected to their current activities. Vex recorded everything, noting how these interactions seemed to strengthen social bonds despite their apparent lack of purpose. The human settlement was small by Xerian standards, buildings arranged along intersecting streets in no discernible pattern. Vehicles moved in designated lanes. People walked on elevated paths, carrying items moving at varying speeds with no obvious efficiency. Their clothing varied widely in color, style, and apparent function. Some humans acknowledged each other, others moved past without interaction. This is what we call a small town, Lisa explained, guiding them along the walkway. This is where many of our researchers live when they're not at the facility. She pointed out various structures explaining their functions: retail establishments where humans exchanged currency for goods, food service locations where they consumed nutrition in group settings, a medical center for treating illness and injury, a structure called a library containing physical information storage devices, books. Vex observed humans of varying ages engaging in different activities, children running in an open space, adults supervising them, elderly humans sitting on benches. The variety seemed excessive, inefficient, yet the society functioned. The apparent chaos concealed patterns that emerged upon closer observation. They entered a structure Lisa called a cafe, a place where humans gathered to consume beverages and food items while engaging in social interaction. The space was filled with small tables where humans sat in groups or pairs, speaking, listening, laughing. Some worked with primitive data devices while consuming liquids. "What would you like to try?" Lisa asked as they approached a counter where a human waited to take their order. Vex had no preference but understood this was a social ritual requiring participation. "I will defer to your recommendation," Lisa suggested. "It's a plant infusion. Most of our researchers practically live on it." They sat at a table near a transparent wall that allowed observation of the street outside. Lisa ordered for the group. The Xerians were provided with beverages, while the humans selected various items. The liquid in Vex's cup was brown with a complex aroma. Vex analyzed its chemical composition, finding various plant compounds. Some would have mild effects on human neurology. As Vex observed the humans around them, she noted how Lisa interacted with other members of her species. She appeared to know many of the town's inhabitants, greeting them by name, asking about others who were not present. This network of connections seemed important to human society. Lisa turned her attention to Vex. "What do you think of our little town? It is less ordered than Xerian settlements," Vex replied. "Our habitats are designed for maximum efficiency, structures arranged to minimize transit time, resources distributed according to function." Lisa sipped her beverage. "Do you have places like this where people just gather to be together?" "Such gatherings would serve no purpose," Vex explained. "Information is exchanged through the central network. Social bonding is unnecessary for function." Lisa's expression changed in a way Vex was beginning to recognize as sadness. "That sounds so lonely to me." Nex interjected. "Xerians do not experience loneliness. It is an emotional response that would interfere with optimal function." Lisa looked between them. "Do all Xerians feel exactly the same way about everything?" "We do not feel," Vex corrected. "We assess, we evaluate based on logic and fact. When presented with identical information, Xerians reach identical conclusions. But you're individuals?" Lisa persisted. "Surely you have different perspectives, different approaches. Individuality serves no evolutionary purpose beyond specialized function." Next stated, "Our society advanced beyond such primitive variations." Vex found herself experiencing something unusual as Nex spoke. A resistance to these statements, though they aligned perfectly with Xerian philosophy. Was her time among humans affecting her thought patterns? Was she developing what humans would call an opinion? After they finished their beverages, Lisa suggested showing them more of the town. They walked along the streets observing humans engaged in various activities. When they passed a structure emanating sounds, Lisa paused music. She explained, "This is what we call a music shop. Humans create organized sound patterns for both communication and pleasure. Would you like to hear some?" Before Nex could object, Vex responded, "Such an experience would provide valuable research data." They entered the shop. The interior was filled with devices Lisa identified as instruments and storage units containing recorded music. A human approached asking if they needed assistance. Lisa explained they were visitors interested in experiencing Earth music. The human activated a device, and sounds filled the space. Vex had studied human music as a communication form, but experiencing it directly was different. The sounds created patterns that registered in her neural pathways differently than speech. The tones, rhythms, harmonies affected her physical systems in unexpected ways. She observed the humans in the shop, some moving their bodies in response to the sound, some appearing to experience emotional states. "This is one of my favorites," Lisa said as the music changed to a different pattern. "The composition has always reminded me of sunrise." Vex listened, attempting to understand how organized sound could represent a visual phenomenon. The connection seemed illogical. Yet as the music continued, she experienced unusual sensory responses. Images formed in her mind, colors, patterns, sensations. Her processing systems attempted to categorize these responses but failed. They existed outside Xerian experience. Lisa was watching her. What do you think? Vex considered her response. The honest assessment would acknowledge these unusual effects. But Nex was present, observing. The patterns have mathematical precision yet appear to serve no communication function. That's not entirely true, Lisa replied. Music communicates things that can't be put into words. Feelings, memories, connections, when they left the music shop. Vex noticed that her processing systems continued to replay portions of the sounds she would need to analyze this phenomenon further. As they continued through the town, Lisa led them to an open area she called a park. Humans of various ages engaged in activities that appeared to have no purpose beyond what they termed enjoyment. Children climbed on metal structures. Adults walked companion animals on tethers. Some humans simply sat on benches observing. Others lay on the ground beneath trees. They paused near a small body of water where birds landed on the surface, causing ripples to spread outward. Humans value these spaces. Lisa explained. We need connection with natural environments for optimal mental health. Xerians have eliminated dependence on natural systems, Nex stated. Our environments are entirely engineered for stability and control. Lisa looked thoughtful. But at what cost? The question created unusual processing patterns in Vex's mind. She had never considered that Xerian advancement might involve loss rather than pure gain. This perspective was inconsistent with everything she had been taught. As the day continued, they visited more locations. Lisa, showing them a medical facility, a learning center for juvenile humans, a structure where humans gathered for governance decisions. Each provided data on human society, yet Vex found her attention increasingly drawn to Lisa herself. The way she interacted with her environment, her responses to other humans, her apparent pleasure in sharing her world. When they returned to the research facility that evening, Vex prepared her report for Commander Trell. She included detailed observations of human social structures, their inefficient yet functional community systems. But once, again she found herself omitting certain details, her unusual responses to music, the questions forming in her processing systems about Xerian evolution, the increasing frequency with which her attention focused on Lisa Walsh. The following morning, Vex prepared for her expedition with Lisa. She reported to her team that she would be conducting field research on human recreational patterns. This was not untrue, yet not entirely complete. She had listened to the music device. Throughout her rest cycle, the sounds had created unusual processing states similar to what humans might call dreaming. Though Xerians did not dream, Lisa arrived driving a smaller vehicle than previous excursions. I'm glad you decided to come, she said as Vex joined her. This place is special to me. I don't share it with many people. The statement created an unexpected response in Vex's neural pathways, a sense that Lisa was offering something beyond mere data collection. This merited further analysis. They drove away from the research facility following a road that wound through forests and hills. The landscape changed, becoming more dramatic with rock formations rising from the earth. The air temperature varied as they gained elevation. Why? Do you find this location significant? Vex asked. Lisa considered the question. It's hard to explain. It's partly the beauty of the place, but also what it represents. To me, it's a reminder that beneath the surface of our planet there's still so much power and mystery forces that shaped everything we see. I go there when I need perspective. They continued driving for 27 minutes before Lisa stopped the vehicle at a small clearing. No other humans were present. The only sounds came from wind, moving through trees and small flying creatures Lisa called birds. They walked along a narrow path that descended between rock formations. The air grew warmer with increasing moisture. Content. Around a final curve, the path opened to reveal a series of pools. Steam rose from their surfaces, creating a misty atmosphere. The pools were different sizes and colors, surrounded by mineral formations in white, yellow, and red patterns. Water flowed between them, creating small waterfalls. Hot springs, Lisa explained, geothermal energy heating underground water. The different colors come from minerals and in some cases specialized microorganisms that thrive in extreme conditions. Vex analyzed the environment, the temperature variance, the mineral content. The unique ecosystem all provided fascinating scientific data. Yet she found herself responding to more than these measurable factors. The aesthetic arrangement, the play of light through steam, the sounds of moving water. These elements combined to create an experience that defied standard Xerian analysis. Lisa led her to one of the larger pools. This one has the perfect temperature for humans, she said, removing her outer garments to reveal what Vex recognized as swimming attire. Humans immerse themselves in these waters. The minerals have health benefits for our skin and muscles, but mostly we do it because it feels wonderful. Vex hesitated. Xerians did not engage in immersion for pleasure. Their hygiene processes were efficient, brief, utilitarian. I brought an extra suit if you'd like to try, Lisa offered. It should fit your physiology. The proper response would be to decline, to observe only, to maintain Xerian detachment. Yet Vex found herself accepting the garment. Lisa turned away, offering privacy as Vex changed. The thin fabric felt unusual against her skin, exposing much of her purple-tinged exterior. To the air. Lisa turned back her expression, showing what Vex had learned to recognize as appreciation. You look nice. Different from humans, but in a beautiful way. Beautiful. Vex had never considered herself in aesthetic terms. Xerians evaluated physical form only for function. This perspective shift created unusual processing patterns. Lisa stepped into the pool water, reaching her waist. The sunlight caught in her hair as she turned to Vex. It's wonderful. Come in slowly. Let your body adjust to the temperature. Vex followed carefully, placing one foot then another into the water. The sensation was immediate and intense. The heat, the mineral content, the buoyancy, all registered on her sensory receptors, creating a cascade of input. She moved deeper until the water surrounded her lower body. Her systems adjusted, analyzing the composition of the liquid, the temperature, variations, the pressure against her skin. Lisa submerged herself to her shoulders, closing her eyes with an expression Vex now recognized as pleasure. Isn't it amazing? She said softly. Amazing was not a term in Xerian scientific vocabulary. It implied emotional response rather than objective assessment. Yet as Vex allowed herself to sink deeper into the water, she found no other term adequate. The experience transcended standard categorization. Her sensory systems registered the minerals her skin, absorbed the varying temperature layers, the weightlessness of partial buoyancy. But beyond these measurable factors was something else, something her scientific training had never prepared her for. They remained in the water. Vex, observing how Lisa moved with apparent freedom. The human floated on her back, looking up at the sky through rising steam tendrils. Her face showed complete relaxation. Vex attempted to mimic the position, allowing the water to support her body. The sensation of weightlessness, combined with heat, created unusual neural responses. Her systems entered a state of heightened awareness, while simultaneously experiencing what could only be termed relaxation. The contradiction defied Xerian processing protocols. Lisa swam closer. Tell me what you're thinking, Vex considered her response. The truthful answer would reveal too much about her changing neural patterns. Instead, she replied, the mineral composition creates interesting sensory input. Lisa smiled. You can just say it feels good, you know? It's allowed. The concept of allowed versus forbidden sensations was foreign to Xerian thinking. Yet Vex found herself considering it. Her experiences since arriving on Earth existed outside standard protocols, outside approved Xerian behavior. If the Council knew of her developing responses, she would be immediately recalled. Her neural pathways reset, her programming purged of these anomalies. The thought created an unexpected response, a resistance so strong it registered as physical sensation. They moved between different pools, Lisa explaining the varying mineral compositions and temperatures. Each created different sensory experiences. In one pool, tiny organisms created a pleasant tingling sensation against Vex skin. In another, the high mineral content made floating effortless. In a third, a small waterfall provided massage-like pressure when they sat beneath it. Throughout the experience, Vex found her attention increasingly focused on Lisa, the water beating on her skin, the way sunlight reflected in her eyes, the sound of her voice echoing slightly against the rock formations. These observations served no research purpose, yet dominated Vex's processing. After several hours, they emerged from the final pool, Lisa providing towels to remove excess moisture. Vex noticed how the experience had affected her physical systems. Her muscles showed decreased tension, her circulation had increased, her neural pathways operated with unusual clarity. The benefits appeared to extend beyond mere pleasure. They sat on rocks warmed by the sun, allowing their bodies to dry. Lisa produced food items from a container she had brought. She called it a picnic, explaining that humans often combined outdoor locations with communal eating. The food was simple, what Lisa termed fruit, cheese, and bread, but Vex found the flavors intensified, perhaps due to her heightened sensory state from the mineral waters as they ate. Lisa asked about Xerian homeworld. Vex described the crystalline cities, the advanced technology, the perfectly controlled environments. But as she spoke, she found herself viewing her world differently than before. She noted absences she had never considered. The lack of unpredictability. The absence of natural beauty. The missing connections that humans seem to value so highly. Do you miss it? Lisa asked. Xerians do not experience nostalgia, Vex replied automatically, then paused. Considering the correct answer would be that Xerians focused only on present function, that emotional attachment to location was inefficient. Yet she found herself unable to give this response. I find Earth provides unique research opportunities. Lisa seemed to understand what remained unspoken. You know what I think? She said, watching steam rise from the pools. I think your people gave up too much in their evolution. The chaos, the messiness, the unpredictability. Those things drove us to adapt, to create, to connect. Maybe perfect efficiency isn't the highest achievement. Maybe there's something beyond that. The statement created immediate processing conflicts in Vex's mind. It contradicted everything in Xerian philosophy, yet she could not dismiss it. Her experiences on Earth suggested Lisa might be correct, that emotions might have value beyond their evolutionary origins. That connection might serve purposes beyond mere reproduction and species continuation. As the sun began to lower in the sky, they gathered their belongings and returned to the vehicle Lisa drove them back toward the research facility. The silence between them felt different than silence among Xerians. It seemed to contain something unspoken, something Vex could not yet categorize. Thank you for sharing this place with me, Vex said as they neared their destination. The experience provided valuable research data. Lisa glanced at her with a smile that suggested she understood what Vex was not saying. You're welcome. I enjoyed sharing it with you. That night, as Vex prepared her daily report, she found herself increasingly selective in what she transmitted to the explorer. Her description of the hot springs mentioned only geological features and mineral compositions. She omitted the sensory experiences, the strange neural responses, the conversations with Lisa. The omissions were deliberate, a behavior that would be considered malfunction in Xerian society, yet she continued. The next morning, Vex received a transmission from Commander Trell. The explorer would be initiating direct communication with all team members. The Council had requested detailed neural scans as part of standard protocol. Vex stared at the message, her systems experiencing what humans would call alarm. The scans would reveal her neural changes, her emotional development, her connection to Lisa. Everything she had been concealing. She had precisely 6 hours before the scheduled transmission. Her options were limited. She could submit to the scan and be recalled to Xeria for neural reconditioning. She could attempt to mask her changes, though success was unlikely given Xerian technology. Or she could choose a third option, one without precedent. In Xerian history, Vex left her quarters, moving through the research facility with purpose. She found Lisa in the main laboratory analyzing water samples from their previous expedition. The human looked up with a smile that created immediate sensory responses in Vex's neural pathways. I need to speak with you privately, Vex said. Her tone must have conveyed urgency because Lisa immediately set aside her work and led them to her office, closing the door. What's wrong? Lisa asked, her expression showing. Concerned, Vex considered her words, carefully organizing the complex situation into terms Lisa would understand. My ship is conducting neural scans of all team members today. Standard protocol. They say, but these scans will show that I have changed, that I am experiencing. She hesitated, searching for the correct term. Emotions. Lisa was silent for a moment, processing this information. And that's bad. It's unprecedented, Vex explained. Xerians eliminated emotional capacity from our species generations. The changes in my neural patterns would be considered malfunction contamination. I would be immediately recalled and subjected to reconditioning. The human reached out, touching Vex's arm, creating cascades of sensory input. But they're your feelings, your experiences. How can they just erase them? That's our way, Lisa. Vex said. The collective determines optimal function. Individual variance is corrected. I don't understand? Lisa shook her head. How did this happen to you if your species doesn't have emotions? Vex had considered this question extensively, analyzing her neural changes, seeking their origin. I believe the capacity was never fully eliminated. Only suppressed, dormant. Perhaps designed to activate only in emergency situations to provide adaptation options. I hypothesized that extensive exposure to humans particularly. She stopped, unable to complete the statement. To me, Lisa finished softly. Understanding. Filling her eyes. Vex nodded. To you. Your emotions are strong, Lisa. Your connections to others, to your world, your passion for your work. These patterns somehow activated dormant neural pathways in my systems. Lisa was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, what do you want to do? Want. The concept had been meaningless to Vex before coming to Earth. Xerians did not want. They assessed optimal function and followed logical protocols, but now faced with this crisis, she recognized the sensation forming in her neural pathways. Desire, preference. Individual choice. I do not wish to return to what I was. Vex said the words, feeling strange and powerful. I cannot return to emptiness after experiencing. She struggled to find the words after experiencing this. Lisa stepped closer, her proximity creating neural responses Vex could not control. What are your options? I have calculated 3 possibilities. Vex began. First, submit to the scan and accept reconditioning. This is the Xerian way. Second, attempt to mask my neural changes, though probability of success is below 12%. Third, she paused. The third option had never been chosen by any Xerian in recorded history. Third, I could separate from my people, remain on Earth, not return to the ship. The statement hung in the air between them. Lisa's expression showed multiple emotions, surprise, concern, and something else Vex was still learning to identify. Would they allow that? Lisa asked. They would not. Vex replied. Xerian protocol requires all team members to return. The knowledge we possess about our technology, our society, cannot be shared with other species. It is forbidden. So what you're saying? Lisa spoke carefully, is that you'd have to disappear. Vex nodded. Hide. At least until they leave Earth orbit. Without me, they would eventually depart. The mission has specific time parameters. What would happen to you after that? Lisa asked. Vex had not calculated long-term projections. The immediate crisis had occupied her processing capacity. I would need to establish a new identity. Learn to function within human society. A difficult adaptation, but not impossible. And is that what you want? Lisa's eyes held Vex to stay here. On Earth, Vex experienced a cascade of sensory responses to the question, neural pathways activating simultaneously, creating patterns she could not fully process, and the correct Xerian response would be that want was irrelevant, that function and duty were the only considerations. But standing in this small room, looking at Lisa, feeling the new awareness coursing through her systems, she knew only one truth. Yes, she said simply, the word carrying weight beyond its single syllable. Lisa was quiet for a long moment. I could help you. She finally said, I have friends who would understand, people who would protect you. The offer created unexpected neural responses. Gratitude, relief, hope, emotions Vex was still learning to identify. You would risk yourself for me. Lisa smiled, that expression that had first begun changing Vex's neural patterns. That's what humans do for people they care about. Care. The concept had been theoretical to Vex before coming to Earth. Now it registered as something powerful, something fundamental, something worth preserving, even at great cost. They spent the next hours developing a strategy. Lisa contacted trusted colleagues. They arranged transportation to a remote location owned by a researcher named Maya A. Cabin, in mountains far from the facility where Vex could remain hidden until the explorer departed. They gathered supplies, items Vex would need for extended isolation. Lisa provided communications, devices, human clothing, items for basic needs. As the deadline for the neural scan approached, Vex prepared final messages to Commander Trell. Carefully constructed reports explaining her decision to remain in isolated observation for an extended research period. She included sufficient scientific justification to delay immediate concern, but knew the explorer would eventually send searchers. The deception would buy valuable time. Nothing more. Lisa drove them away from the facility, following remote roads that wound through forests. The human was silent, focused on their journey, but occasionally reached over to touch Vex's hand, a gesture of reassurance that created complex neural responses. Vex watched the landscape pass, calculating probabilities, analyzing risks. Her Xerian logical processes still functioned but now operated alongside emotional responses, creating a hybrid consciousness, unlike anything in her previous experience. After several hours, they arrived at a small structure nestled among trees. Lisa called it a cabin. It's basic but comfortable, she explained as they entered. Maya uses it for research trips during summer months. No one will look for you here. Vex surveyed the interior. A single room with simple furnishings, a device for food preparation, basic sanitation facilities, primitive but functional. She would adapt. Her people had always valued adaptation, even as they eliminated the emotional drives that often sparked innovation. Lisa showed her how to operate various human devices: the heating unit, the water system, the food storage. The primitive technology was easily mastered. What remained more complex was the emotional reality of her situation. She was choosing exile from her species, separation from everything, familiar rejection of her society's core values. The magnitude of this decision created processing patterns her systems struggled to categorize. As evening approached, Lisa prepared to leave. She would return to the research facility, maintain normal activities, deflect questions about Vex's whereabouts. The success of their plan depended on careful management of information. "I'll bring more supplies tomorrow," Lisa said, "and check if there's any response from your ship." She hesitated, then added, "Are you certain this is what you want?" There may be no going back. Vex considered the question with both her logical processing and her new emotional awareness. The probabilities were concerning, the risks significant. The isolation would be challenging. Yet when she analyzed potential outcomes, returning to Xeria and losing these new experiences, these connections, these feelings, was categorically unacceptable. "I am certain," Vex replied. Lisa moved closer. Something in her expression shifting. Their proximity created immediate neural responses in Vex systems, activating in patterns she was still learning to interpret. When Lisa reached up, touching Vex's face, the contact sent cascades of sensation through her neural pathways. "Then I'll help you through this," Lisa said softly. "Whatever happens." The human leaned forward, bringing their faces close together. Vex recognized the behavior from her research on human social bonding. Lisa was initiating what humans called a kiss, a gesture of affection, connection, intimacy. In Xerian society, such physical contact would be considered unnecessary, inefficient. Yet Vex found herself responding, leaning toward Lisa, allowing their lips to meet. The sensation defied scientific categorization. Neural responses flooded her consciousness. Sensory input overrode analytical processes. Her systems entered a state unlike any in her previous experience. When they separated, Vex understood with sudden clarity what humans called desire, what they meant by connection, what drove them to seemingly irrational behaviors for the sake of others.